we have with us a fabulous guest. His name is Bob Blackman. Bob has been actually serving our community for the last 9.5 years, almost a decade. And I'm privileged to welcome him to MATV's Rajneeti. Welcome, Bob.
Namaskar.
Namaskar. So nice to see you here. And it's always nice to see a friendly face and someone that we can talk to. You've obviously been serving the community, and your service has been absolutely amazing. We've actually done some research and found such wonderful comments about you. So as we go through the journey of your life, and most people will actually want to know, Bob, has it been really easy for you? Most people say, oh, MPs are from a privileged background, they get it easy, they get to the seat, and then it's all easy riding. Tell us a little bit about who Bob Blackman is.
Oh, my goodness me. Well, I started out my political journey when I was a teenager. I went to a local comprehensive school in Wembley. I was always representing my classmates on the school council, became head boy, then went off to university. I did a year out of between school and university, working for the Kodak factory for a year to find out what it was like to work before I went on to university. And I studied physics and maths at Liverpool University. And then I was obviously a student politician. I became president of the Students' Union. And then very sadly, my parents both died. And so I was left with 3 young teenage sisters who I had to bring up. Suddenly I became a dad overnight, which is quite a shock for anyone, frankly, particularly if you're young and you have children. It's you grow with the children, don't you? When you suddenly become the father figure, and there's no mother figure either, to 3 teenage sisters, it's hard.
The weight itself, I can imagine, like you, I had my father unfortunately travel away when I was 16, and to make sure that my parents were okay, my sister was okay, is incredible pressure. But the fact that you still went on to continue with your desire to lead and to make a difference, was there something that inspired you? Was it something within, or you just wanted to make a difference?
I think that politics is not in my family. My mother came from a council estate. My father was born and brought up in Paddington. Basically, my family is relatively humble beginnings. But I've always been someone that likes to speak up on behalf of those that can't speak up for themselves.
Correct.
Or people that don't have time, or people that feel that officialdom is in their way. And actually, the worst thing people can say to me is, you can't do something. Because I say, right, okay, I'll find a way of doing it. That's why, I'm going to do it. And so I became a councillor in Brent. I was a Brent councillor for 24 years. And then I set out on my parliamentary journey back in 1988, where I was seeking to become a Conservative Party candidate. And then I fought Brent South in 1992. I fought Bedford and Kempston in 1997. Wasn't successful in either of those. And then I missed out on the 2001 election because I wasn't successful in the selection process. 2005, I fought Brent North and did very well.
Yes.
And then straight after that, in 2006, I was adopted as the Conservative candidate in Harrow East. And then it was 4 years of hard work being the candidate before I was elected in 2010. And I had 4 years on the Greater London Assembly, representing the people of Brent and Harrow. And then obviously I was a councillor and leader of the Conservative group for 20 years in Brent and 24 years as a councillor. And I've actually just started now I was saying the other day, my 34th year, successive year in elected office.
In politics?
Yeah,
wow.
In politics. So it's a big job. And so when I entered politics, I love the representational role of politics. I think a lot of what we do as politicians is almost like being social workers. People come to me with their problems, and my job is to solve those problems as well as I can. But that's the biggest and most satisfying thing of being a member of Parliament, because so many people come to me with things that they've bashed their heads against a brick wall and against officialdom, and they haven't got anywhere, and they can't get the answers from either the local authority or the public body or private bodies. And my job, I see my job then, is to break down those barriers and get them an answer. Not always the answer they want, I know, but that's always my role, I think.
So a lot of people get nervous. They think, well, they've tried to reach authority, but they haven't been successful, and a lot of them give up. Is it easy to reach out to a member of parliament? And if so, a lot of the viewers that are watching today might say, well, actually, I have this problem and I would like to discuss it. How do they actually get through to you?
Well, in my case, all MPs run their own operations in the way they choose. I obviously have a staff complement that are in the office permanently Monday to Friday from 8:30 in the morning till 5:30 in the evening, covering the office. And what we encourage people to do is to come with their problems, and not physically. They can phone the office, they can write in, they can email in, and then we will look at it and see what we could need to do for them. Some people need to come and see me, and I run a regular surgery session on a Monday morning when Parliament's sitting, and indeed during the recesses, where people can come to see me with an appointment. So we've done some background work before they come to see me, and then we can actually use the time most effectively. And then we will decide what needs to be done. And some of the cases are tragic because people, as you say, people think, oh, well, I don't know what to do about this. And they go off and try and do things by themselves, and they get literally a wall of bureaucracy in front of them. And so it's so much easier, frankly, if they take their case to their Member of Parliament. Then members of Parliament have special hotlines to get through to different government departments and can contact, obviously, government departments or the local authority or whoever and get something done for them. Now, it doesn't always mean that you solve the problem.
No, of course not. But the most important thing that Bob has just said is, and I think this is what people must understand, that he's open and he's willing to listen. If you email, if you call in, if you have a certain issue, the important thing is to take your problems to your local MP. Now, one of the questions we asked.
So just cut across you and give you an example. You say I've nearly a decade of representing people in my constituency. We were doing some numbers on this just this week because obviously when we're facing an election, it's always good to tell people. We've dealt with, in my office, 30,000 people in the constituency who've come to me with an issue or a problem, which we've taken some action on. So it's almost half of my constituents have had contact with me about getting something done for them. Some people have multiple issues that we've had to resolve over the years, but it shows what you can reach out to do. And every letter, every email, every telephone call we take up, and we aim to answer those contacts within 10 working days. Obviously, there's some things that are really urgent, but if it's a routine matter, we try and answer things within 10 working days. We then go to the public authority, we give them 10 working days to answer us, and then we chase them, and we chase them till we get an answer.
So obviously you've mentioned 34 years is a long time in your political career. And a lot of times people will probably have asked you this, and this also interests me. What is the difference between, for a layman to understand, being in the General Assembly and then being an MP? How different are those roles, and how have you been able to do the transformation, and how can people understand?
Okay, well, a councillor obviously looks after a subsection of a constituency. So, for example, in my constituency, we have 9 wards and 3 councillors for each of those wards. So it's 27 councillors. So they have an electorate maybe of about 8,000 people. I have an electorate of 71,000 people. So that it's a scale issue. Obviously, you can't deal with every single person with 71,000 people. You can't deal with every single person individually. You have to do it through correspondence and face-to-face contact where required. Whereas a councillor, obviously dealing with 8,000 people, can deal more directly with people, and they'll deal with the problems of the rubbish collection, street lights, condition of roads and pavements, and adult social care, all that sort of thing that is dealt with by local authority. Member of Parliament, these days, I never turn anyone away. I don't say, oh, this is a council problem, go and see your councillor. I will deal with their problem. But not all MPs do. Some
No.
MPs say, look, this is a council problem, you must go and see your councillor. I always say, look, okay, I will deal with it, we'll take it on, and we'll get a resolution for you. Because if someone comes to me, I want to help them. Natural.
And see, that is the reason why, we're when I said the word privileged to have you, because when we did a little survey, when we talked to local people, we said, you tried to contact Mr. Blackman, and what has the feedback been like? And they've been absolutely positive. They've been thrilled with your approach to the entire system. And I obviously looked at the fact that you live locally, right?
Yes, yes.
So
I live just outside my constituency. I always have done. I've lived in Wembley almost all my life. I was, as I say, I was born in Hammersmith. My parents moved to Hayes, and then really before I went to school, we moved to Wembley, and I've lived there ever since. And so I'm about 2.5 miles outside my constituency, so I can be there in next to no time. But also, there's another thing to this as well. That when you live in your constituency, you never actually switch off.
No.
So you're kind of on call seven days a week, 24 hours a day. I think you need time to just, to be able to rest and recuperate. So actually just being just outside is quite a good thing.
Yes. And here's where this whole matter comes into play, that when one actually lives there, or at least lives in an accessible distance, we're not thinking, or the people aren't thinking, oh, well, he's only here Monday to Wednesday, or she's only here Monday to Wednesday, and then she's gone. So if my problem is going to be heard, it's going to be a few months, at least the whole 10-day time frame for at least to be heard via email is a very important factor in your success, I think.
But also, you see, you also have to think about volume here. I get, on an average day, about 400 to 500 emails. Now, a lot of this, we all get junk emails and so on. We have to go through and sift that from what's junk and what is actually valid contact from constituent. We get briefings from everyone. You'll all sorts of stuff come in, and you have to sort the wheat from the chaff, if you see what I mean, and then make sure that's dealt with quickly. So I routinely do that every day, especially sorting out the constituents' concerns that they're raising with me, to make sure that one of my team goes through that and prioritises it and make sure we're dealing with it as quickly as possible. But some of the other stuff you filter off. But the phone is ringing all the time. We get correspondence as well. I get a pile of correspondence like that every day. You have to understand it's a very busy environment. And so therefore you have to prioritise and make sure things are dealt with quickly. So
obviously the important bit is that you're going to be heard. That is where that is what we have understood from the people that we've spoken to and speaking to you. And it's pretty straightforward. So if you need to, you know where to reach. Now, at the moment, as I was driving into work today, I've been hearing a lot about the Conservative policies and the 20-hour deadline. So tell me, I won't go to Brexit yet. Let us.
Okay, we're talking Brexit. Yeah.
I'm going to give you some time.
We're going to get it done, but don't worry.
But we won't get there so soon. For me and for MATV, the important bit is when we invite our politicians, it is for the people watching to understand who we have and what they actually stand for, and that is what's important to us. So tell us a bit about what's going on in the Conservative Party regarding the upcoming general elections, and what is their stance? I have loads of questions about it, but generally, what's the environment like?
Well, I think what we are concentrating on clearly is we'll park the Brexit issue, as you say, but it's an important issue, because what has happened in the Parliament since 2017, and we had the general election then, is that Brexit has been all-consuming, and actually it's prevented progress on a number of other areas. So what we are talking about, obviously, investment in the National Health Service, where we've promised, pledged an extra £34 billion for the health service over the next 5 years. That means we're going to attract more doctors and nurses, make sure there are first-rate, world-class services available. We've also said, and this is very important, special visa arrangements for people coming, particularly from India, but other countries as well, who are coming to do medical work, be they doctors, nurses, or other aspects of the National Health Service. So that's going to be a particular aim, which I think affects and changes the whole ambit of how the health service operates. We're also obviously talking about making sure that the world-class treatment and the progress in treating preventable diseases and indeed other things like forms of cancer, which are very difficult to cure at times. We're finding cures for that all the time. There's medical advances. So that's one of the areas that we're looking at. And obviously, for my area, one of the things that we're concentrating on is to say there will be a GP appointment available 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. So you'll always be able to see a GP. Equally, if not, there's the urgent care centre. So if
I want to move to your area because I've been trying for 3 days to get through to my GP.
Yeah, we see one of the problems is that it's exactly right. I mean, and this is where politicians always get into a big concern about privatisation. What they forget is that GPs are actually contractors to the National Health Service.
That's right.
GPs are private operations that contract to the health service. So that's actually private companies, and they are under contract to provide a service. One of the big problems is for a lot of GPs, you can only work so many hours a day.
Yes, I know.
So
With this 4-day week suggestion, I don't know where.
Well, I'm listen, I'm not going to get into criticising the opposition for their role in all this. I want to talk positively about what we will do. I mean, they've got themselves into a complete mess over this, unsurprisingly. But what we're talking about clearly is we want to offer that GP service 7 days a week, which means you've got to have group practices that come together. So groups of GPs come together to ensure that that service is provided. Because obviously, people who get ill need to see a doctor, but equally there are times when you want to see a GP for a routine matter, and you're working Monday to Friday, so you want to see a GP at the weekend.
Yes, I mean, the whole after hours thing, that's been promised, but I've not received it. And the fact that you are doing something about it is very important. As we, try and summarize the NHS bit before we go for a break, I want you to just very briefly tell us. So the main aim will be for the NHS with Conservative in power to shorten the waiting times.
Absolutely. I mean, the key point is that if you're ill or you need an operation or you want to go and be diagnosed quickly so that we know what the problem is and then get the treatment that you need. And I think that's the whole point. One of the problems about the National Health Service, and I personally have experienced this, so I know from my personal experience, once you're into the service and you've been diagnosed, the service is wonderful.
That's right.
But it's getting in the first place, getting the diagnosis to find out what your problem is and what treatment you need to fix you. So a lot of the concentration is on primary health care to actually make sure you get into the service and then move on through the service. Because unfortunately, with a lot of these diseases such as cancer and other such problems, if you diagnose early, then actually the treatment is straightforward.
Right.
The longer it's left, the worse it is, and therefore the more radical the treatment has to be. And so there's still some cancers that were very difficult to treat, but that's an example. And we know that 1 in 2 people now are going to be diagnosed with some form of cancer in their lives. So this is a very important aspect, in my view, of the policies that we will be pursuing.
So thank you. That makes sense. And we're going to go for a short break and continue this very enlightening chat. There's a lot to discuss, so stay tuned, but we'll be straight back. Thank you.
The hottest new data offer of the year is with Leica Mobile. Now you can get a phone-busting 40 gigabytes of data with UK Plan Mega, plus unlimited minutes and texts and 100 international minutes for just £20 when you buy online. Valid for 30 days and EU roaming included. This amazing offer is available for both new and existing customers when purchased at leicamobile.co.uk. Terms and conditions apply. Leica Mobile.
Happy feet, even at 30,000 feet. Enjoy more legroom. Enjoy Air India Boeing 787 Dreamliner. Amazing feel, amazing features.
Are you struggling with debts, personal loans, credit cards, store cards, HMRC tax? We at Acme Credit Consultants are here to help, offer a range of financial solutions, debt management plans, individual voluntary arrangement, and bankruptcy. Contact us on 0203 318 0990 and visit us on www.acmecredit.co.uk.
Every problem has a solution. अगर आप फैमिली प्रॉब्लम, नौकरी, पैसा, एजुकेशन या लग्न संबंधित इश्यू से परेशान हैं, तो पंडित जी का फौरन संपर्क करें. India's most spiritual astrologer, healer and psychic, Pandit Tulsi Prasad. To book an appointment, call now 74591 06474 और मुसीबतों से हमेशा के लिए छुटकारा पाइए.
Welcome back. We are watching Rajneeti with Bob Blackman. So we discussed NHS, and another concern for a lot of the MATV viewers has been Labour's stance on India. And because we have Bob here today, we're going to talk about the Conservative stance towards India. So Bob, tell us, what is Conservative stance on India?
Well, clearly, as we leave the European Union, our relationship with India is going to be even more important than it was. Obviously, we've been great friends with India. We regard India as being one of our great allies. And I always take the view of saying that in terms of defence cooperation, security operation, then the natural allies across the world, the United States and Canada, the United Kingdom, Israel, India, Australia, that forms a network, and obviously New Zealand as well, that forms a network around the world of natural allies to actually preserve the security of the world.
Correct.
And indeed, that's why I think our relationship with India has to be a very strong one. We are obviously, having been the original colonial power, no longer the colonial power, we are two great nations with a great shared future. India is the third biggest investor in the UK, and we're the third biggest investor in India. So there's an economic tie.
Friendship, yeah.
But it also, frankly, the language is, although multiple languages spoken
Yes, I'm
in
calling
India,
you Bob G, right?
Bob G. But there are multiple languages spoken in India,
Right.
but everyone speaks English, and,
Yes.
and therefore that's naturally the language of the two great nations. The policies are very simple and very straightforward. We want to strengthen that policy. As we leave the European Union, we want to have a free trade policy with India.
Yes.
I know India has been trying to do this with the European Union for 22 years, unsuccessfully, for various different reasons, mainly because different EU countries say, oh, we've got to reserve this matter, we've got to reserve that matter. We will look at what's good for the UK and what's good for India and form that relationship. But I think it's also the issue of, obviously, so many people of Indian origin are living in our country, integrated, a great part of our country, the contributing to our economy, contributing to our welfare. And I think that's very important. And therefore, we have to have that strong relationship. It was the Conservative government, after all, that lifted the ban that Labour had set in on Narendra Modi visiting the UK. He was banned from visiting the UK until 2011, I think it was, when Prime Minister David Cameron lifted that ban, and Narendra was allowed to come here.
What a great event Wembley
it was.
Stadium
I was there.
I know you were. I know you were.
I was there.
I was
in Parliament when he spoke in the Royal Gallery, and helped take him round on a tour of of Parliament. So yes, and I've met him on many other occasions since.
And it's so heartening and so delightful to actually, as someone who is of Indian origin, that when someone respects another country's prime minister and understands the culture and tradition,
Yes.
it is very, very positive as a layman to see that. You obviously heard about what happened on 15th of August
Yes.
at the High Commission. And we obviously had someone talk about what happened, and
Yeah.
they showed us a letter that they'd sent out on behalf of the Labour Party. Did Conservative Party do the same?
What you need to remember is when we had the disgraceful events with the thugs attacking families outside the Indian High Commission on the 15th of August. We then had, by the way, the same thing on the 1st of October, and they've threatened to bring 10,000 people in to demonstrate on Diwali. And I stood up at Prime Minister's Question Time, which you may have seen, many of your viewers may have seen, and asked Boris Johnson as Prime Minister to make sure they did not get access to the Indian High Commission. We all take the view of saying peaceful demonstrations, fine. We don't mind people demonstrating peacefully, but when it comes to thuggish attacks on families,
frozen bottles were thrown.
Yeah,
there were bus loads of people that had come.
Exactly. There were 50 busloads of people that came in from the Midlands alone.
That's right.
To bring people in. The estimates were 10,000 people, intimidating. No reason for this whatsoever other than to cause trouble. And so it's absolutely and utterly unacceptable. And I'm glad to say that the Prime Minister made clear we would not allow it to happen again. I didn't stop there because I always worry that people say, oh yes, we're going to, but we need to stop it. So I insisted we got a statement from the Metropolitan Police, which was publicly aired the following day, which detailed what action they were taking. So they blockaded the roads around the Indian High Commission. They gave the demonstrators the permission to march.
And this is for 1st of October? Or
no, this was for Diwali. So they were allowed to march, but they were allowed to march in Parliament Square and Trafalgar Square. So they could have their demonstration, but they weren't allowed to go anywhere near the Indian High Commission.
Yes, and it was peaceful.
Yeah, it was peaceful. And actually, it fizzled out into a bit of a damp squib because that demonstrated that actually what they wanted to do was to come and attack the Indian High Commission again. And it's totally and utterly unacceptable. And of course, that comes because of the Indian government's decision to abrogate Article 370 and 37A and the other elements of the so-called temporary arrangements to the constitution for Jammu and Kashmir. And I'm very clear on this. And
tell us exactly what you think, because I know it's a bilateral issue. And
listen, we take the Conservative Party takes the view very clearly that that the internal matters of India are for India to resolve. They're not for outside interference by the United Nations, the United Kingdom, or anyone else. And when there is a dispute in borders between India and Pakistan, that's a bilateral matter for those two countries to resolve. We are no longer a colonial power to go in and tell people what to do. I take the view, and a very strong view, that the entire princely state of Jammu and Kashmir is a sovereign part of India. And the only illegal activities that are going on is the illegal occupation by Pakistani army in part of Kashmir. They should leave, the line of control should be dismantled, and all the terrorist bases that are along that line of control should be removed. And then we can restore peace and harmony to Jammu and Kashmir, and the economic powerhouse that can come from that, the culture, the tourism.
It would just
it is such a beautiful place. I think I'm the last serving Member of Parliament in the UK to actually have visited Srinagar. I was there in February 2016, and I saw for myself from the Summer Palace the beauty of the valley. And if we could just get to a point whereby that was secure and people could go, the opportunities for the people that live there would be enormous, because it would be literally the Venice of Asia. It would be wonderful.
It's actually wonderful that you feel so strongly about it, because the anti-India sentiments within the Labour Party have concerned millions of Indians globally, and especially the fact that they were actually getting together, 8 of them, writing to the Prime Minister saying, we need to ban India. And the interesting thing that I need to understand, and I'm sure other people also need to understand, is if it is a bilateral issue, if it is another country's issue, why is it still being thrown about? Is it just a matter of...
Well, I think there is an issue. I held a conference on this as long ago as 1992 in Brent Town Hall, when the plight of the Kashmir Pandits came forth, where they'd been...
Yes, I read the article.
When they'd been forced to leave in the genocide that took place in January of 1990. And I took up their plight then because their ancestral home was the valley, and they were forced to leave at the point of a gun. And so therefore you immediately take that up. So I've been speaking about this for 30 years. And I think people need to appreciate and understand this is not something new that I've suddenly embarked upon. It's something, a passion that I have for the people who suffered completely losing their homes and their heritage. And I think that's one of the things that's important. What has happened, of course, is that there are lots of people of Kashmiri origin living in the UK, and they are very vocal. They've been breathing in MPs' ears for a long time. And a lot of those people have been used as a vote bank, particularly for the Labour Party, I have to say, to actually get them secured in office. And they make a fuss in Parliament as well. I mean, when I speak in Parliament on this issue, there's only a few of us, 2 or 3 of us, that actually speak up on behalf of India. And I think this is one of the things that I feel very strongly about the Indian community, that often the Indian community is very integrated into the UK. Everyone gets on with their jobs.
Yes.
They look after their families. They want their children to succeed in education. They want their children to succeed in their working lives. They don't actually speak up politically. And I think this has now actually enraged people, as you quite rightly say. The Labour Party passed this this motion at their conference unanimously, which is completely anti-India and interference in India, and I'm afraid an absolute outrage in my view.
And to be honest,
no one spoke up against it. You see, this is the thing.
That's the thing, and this is where you're right. What tends to happen, and you are right to some extent, with the Indian community, is that we have been taught to keep our heads down, work hard, make sure that our children educate themselves, and make sure that the country that they have migrated to, we contribute towards their economy as well as doing something back for people back home. The matter that you raised before regarding policing, now the letter, there was a letter again that one of the other members of Parliament shared with us that he had sent to the Metropolitan Police. And I will only quote unquote, the Metropolitan Police said in that letter regarding 15th of August, and I'm glad, you changed it, but at that point the police were saying, oh, well, there was nothing untoward that actually happened.
Well, that is completely untrue.
So how is policing working? And do you think it's working?
I think one of the problems is that particular demonstration, they underestimated what was going to happen. I think they got it wrong. They arrested 6 people. So, it wasn't a case that there was no action. But I've seen videos, I'm afraid, of the criminal damage being done to the Indian High Commission. So it is quite clear that there was damage done, and equally families were intimidated. And I think once it was brought to the attention of the police and they started to understand the extent of this, that's when they took action. And they have to take action under the Public Order Act. There is a problem about whether you ban marches or you ban demonstrations. What they did, which is very sensible on Diwali, was they said you can have your march, but these are the restrictions that are placed on them. This is the route you must follow, and you must not deviate from that route. And anyone that attempts to get anywhere near the High Commission will be arrested.
Correct.
And that I think set the scene. Unfortunately, it had to be this way round, but it would have been far better if they'd done that to start with, but they didn't. So we have to deal with the consequences of where we're at.
So in terms of the topic of policing, I wanted to talk to you about your constituency and the policing issues. Obviously, knife crime is up in all of those matters. Where has there been a failure, or has there been a success, or areas where you think there needs to be some additional work?
Well, what we need to do, and we've already embarked on this, and Boris Johnson as Prime Minister has made this clear, we're recruiting 20,000 new police officers. They're being recruited, they'll be trained. It takes time to train them, it takes time for them to be rolled out. We've had an increase in London in particular of gun and knife crime. Gun crime, not so much, but every time you have a gun crime, it's awful. But knife crime, very much, I'm afraid. And too many young people have lost their lives. In my constituency and around my area, almost every single incident of gun or knife crime has been gang related. And these basically are gangs that are involved in dealing with drugs and other criminal activities, burglaries as well. And they are all gang warfare, and all the victims and all the perpetrators have been involved in different gangs. And only one innocent passerby has been injured over this last 18 months. But it's still sad that people are doing that. And I take a very strong view and say, if people carry knives, they're going to be tempted to use them. So I sponsored quite a while ago an amendment to the Criminal Justice Act that said if you're caught with a knife, you get a warning first time, and second time you go to prison. I think you have to say to people, if you carry a knife without justification, by justification I mean if you're someone who's an electrician going to a job, you're going to have tools.
Yeah, or a butcher.
Or
I get what you're saying.
basically,
Yeah.
people who have a reason to carry knives around with them because they're going to their jobs, that's one thing. But there's no reason for anyone else to carry a knife. If you carry a knife, you're likely to use it if you get into an altercation or a fight. And I'm afraid that means that someone will be either badly injured or killed. And so I take a zero tolerance approach to this. Anyone carrying a knife without good reason, in my view, should go to prison. And then we can punish them appropriately and set them right. But I think that has to be the way. And we have to take that sort of stringent view. I've certainly voiced that view to Priti Patel, who's obviously our Home Secretary.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll see some stringent action against this, because it's a twofold thing.
We want, obviously we want to understand the figures and we want to see if there is actual work being done on behalf of the Metropolitan Police to reduce it. I'm sure there is, but I'm glad that at least it's something that is being worked on and looked at. The other issue that we were talking about was when we talked about, the pain and the suffering for victims, there's also the welfare of society.
Yes.
Now, for your constituents and for the region of Harrow East, for instance, in terms of welfare and society, how important do you get enough time to look into it? Do you have any issues at the moment that you want to bring to the fore? Or
there are several, and obviously it depends on both the demographics of the area, but also the particular problems that people face. So one of the things about my constituency is we have a lot of people who work in either financial services industry and commute down from Harrow down to Canary Wharf or the City of London. We have a lot of people who are contractors,
right,
and therefore they are suffering from various different rules about what tax they pay and on what basis. So that's a big issue. On people's pensions, obviously. One of the areas of we have an ageing demographic, if you like, in my constituency, with a lot of elderly people. So I'm really pleased that the pension is going up by 3.9% next April. So that's good news for everyone receiving their pension. But also we do have a large number of women who are what we call the WASPy women.
Who are upset
because we've had an equalisation of the pension age between men and women. And obviously they are having to work longer.
68, I think.
Yeah, well, 67, I think it is at the moment. But obviously it's going up all the time. So from their perspective, they are either being forced to work longer,
48,000,
if they took time out to have a family, for example, and they didn't make arrangements to make up their pension plans, then they may have to work even longer just to make sure they've got a proper pension. This is a really difficult one because the decision was taken under the last Labour government. I mean, it was way before our time. And what happened was there was a poor communication of what this meant to people and what action they needed to take. And some women obviously inquired into this and they made arrangements, and others didn't. And the ones that didn't, of course, are now saying, oh my goodness, what's happened? Where's my pension? So I think I have a lot of sympathy for the plight of women, because I don't think it was communicated.
No,
to
I think that's what I've come across in the last couple of weeks when we are coming up to the election. I want to talk to you more about Brexit, which we kept for the last segment. So we're going to go through a short break, and in the last segment, we'll definitely discover what the Brexit story is all about. And I'm sure you want to know what's going to happen on December 12th. All right, short break, see you soon.
The hottest new data offer of the year is with Leica Mobile. Now you can get a phone-busting 40 gigabytes of data with UK Plan Mega, plus unlimited minutes and texts and 100 international minutes for just £20 when you buy online. valid for 30 days and EU roaming included. This amazing offer is available for both new and existing customers when purchased at likeamobile.co.uk. Terms and conditions apply. Like a Mobile.
Board fresh, breathe fresh. With lower altitude cabin pressure. Enjoy Air India Boeing 787 Dreamliner. Amazing feel, amazing features.
Are you struggling with debts, personal loans, credit cards, store cards, HMRC tax? We at Acme Credit Consultants are here to help, offer a range of financial solutions, debt management plans, individual voluntary arrangement, and bankruptcy. Contact us on 0203 318 0990 and visit us on www.acmecredit.co.uk.
सत्संग की आधी घड़ी तब के वर्ष हजार तो भी बराबर है नहीं कहे कबीर विचार। देखिए सभी पवित्र धर्मों के पवित्र शास्त्रों व ग्रंथों के आधार पर जगत गुरु तत्वदर्शी संत रामपाल जी महाराज द्वारा अद्वितीय आध्यात्मिक सत्संग प्रवचन का विशेष प्रसारण।
Welcome back, friends. We are watching Rajneeti, you and me together, and we have our wonderful Bob Blackman talking to us about several things that concern us. And we are obviously going to talk about Brexit, but as a mother, I often always think about education in children. So, Bob, in terms of education, what is your policy, the Conservative policy, and do you have any special initiatives that you want to share with us?
Yes, obviously one of the things we're doing is improving the funding for education. One of the problems that we've got is that there are different rates of funding for education all over the country.
Correct.
So what we're aiming to do is to level up the amount of money so that every school will get more money, but some schools that are getting a lot less at the moment will get large amounts of money. So I think we're in the position whereby virtually every school is getting 2% or more increase in their funding per pupil. And therefore, that means that they'll be getting the funding they need. But large numbers of schools in areas, particularly rural areas, they're going to get a big increase in the funding. We've also increased the funding for adult education, so for both sixth forms and further education, to make sure.
That's a very important topic, and I'm glad you
It
raised
is.
that, because you have a very diverse diaspora that lives in your
Absolutely.
constituency, and the fact that most of them who can't maybe probably not speak English fluently,
Yeah.
need help with that. They need so much more in terms of adult education. Grammar schools, what's your
Well, we don't have any grammar schools in my constituency. We do have a number of schools which are basically private schools dotted around outside my constituency, where a lot of parents will send their children to, either they're fee paying or on scholarships. I have a very big view on free schools, for example. So in my constituency, we have the first all through Hindu school, starting from 4 years to 18.
Avanti,
yes, which I helped get the site and the funding for and make sure it happened. I believe personally that parents should have the right to choose the schooling of their choice. So if they want a faith-based education, we have in the constituency, obviously a Hindu school, we have Catholic schools, we have Church of England schools, we have Jewish schools. So it's natural that people who follow a particular religion want the ethos of that religion. I strongly support that, always have done. And I don't stop there. I've helped and assisted to get a Muslim primary school off the ground, so that parents that want that as their faith can also get it. So we're being fair to all faiths. I think that's very important. And I do think the great thing is that whenever you get parents of Indian origin, moving into an area, the standards of education improve quite dramatically because parents are very demanding. They want the best for their children, quite rightly, and they therefore make great demands on not only their children but the schools which their children go to. Which in my constituency, all the schools are good or outstanding. I mean, they are really good quality schools, but it's also the people that are sending their children there that keep them up to speed.
Yes, I mean, I totally empathize and I totally understand that personally, because when you talked about, and I have deep respect for it, because I run a center where I offer, education, dance, music, language training. And unfortunately, I'm not lucky enough to be in your borough, but...
that you can still move.
I'm thinking.
The house is available.
I'm thinking. Yes, the fact that you're doing that makes a huge difference. And for our viewers, it is very important for them to understand that schools like Krishnavanti, they exist for a reason. If you cannot afford to send your children, if you've just migrated to this country and you're struggling, then these are the kind of initiatives that actually work for you.
And the worst thing is, and this is where I will get party political, is the Labour Party have committed to abolishing all these schools.
That's why I mentioned grammar, because they're thinking of abolishing grammar schools.
They would abolish grammar schools. I think grammar schools have a place. We don't have the grammar school system in around my area, but they're talking about abolishing free schools. And that to me has been one of the great adverts of the last 10 years that have improved standards, that people have come along and sponsored schools, used private finance as well as the public finance to actually provide education free of charge, and it's advanced actually the standards of education. I think it's madness to contemplate that.
So where do they come with that? Are they trying to imply that they're saving money, or is that their logic for it? Or
I think personally it's their philosophy that everyone should go to the same sort of school, and that's why they'd abolish private schools and public schools. Everyone should go to the same school, should get the same education regardless. And I'm very sorry, different people have different abilities and different needs. And what you have to do is provide education that meets both the abilities and the needs. And I think you obviously want your children to do the best they can do and become the best they can be. But not everyone has equal ability.
Aptitude, yeah.
What they should have is obviously the education needs to be orientated not only the needs but the capabilities of the child, and you don't want to draw out. But everyone's got talents. Some may be musically talented, some may be academically talented, some may be very good with their hands.
And that's so important, because if I look at it, what happens is if you just cattle them, or rather sheep them into this standard school, you don't get the opportunity to explore your ability, and then is when we are coming to the next issue.
Mediocrity is what happens.
So you get bored, and then you have gangs of boys standing outside, smoking and drinking, causing unnecessary ruckus. Coming to ruckus and smoking and drinking. I read an article.
I'm a fervent anti-smoker. Over the last few years, last 4.5 years, I've chaired the all-party group for Action on Smoking and Health. We've made great advances in stopping young people from starting to smoke, which is the biggest thing we can do for health of this country. Because once you become a smoker, it's very hard to give up. Once you're addicted, because nicotine is the most addictive drug there is known to man.
And these nicotine patches are actually worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Although the carcinogenic elements of cigarettes are obviously taking that puff of smoking to your lungs and so on. So I'm very anti-smoking, and equally, I think the other thing that I'm very keen on is getting pregnant women to give up smoking, because what they don't realise is the damage they're doing to the unborn child, and equally getting their partner to give up smoking as well, so that all three actually benefit from this. At the moment, unfortunately, 11% of pregnant women carry on smoking all the way through pregnancy, and the 11%. Damage they do to the fetus is terrible. Yes, it's terrible. It's a stubborn area. We've got to do far more. I want us to be, every pregnant woman should be given counselling on why it's important to give up smoking. Because I think most women who drink alcohol will give up drinking alcohol when they're pregnant.
Absolutely,
and they know.
Yes.
But they won't give up smoking if they're already addicted to smoking. They need to understand the damage they're doing to their unborn child by not doing so. So I'm very keen on that. And I've been promoting those initiatives in Parliament and to the Health Service all the time I've been there. I will continue that if I'm re-elected.
And I hope 11% is a massive number, and the amount of damage those babies will suffer is going to be terrible. But damage control is at the moment the situation that we actually are in. So we want to, before we finish our show today, we have to.
We got another B word.
Yeah. we tentatively walk towards Brexit. So as I understand, Mr. Johnson, our respected Prime Minister, was saying today that we're losing £1 billion a month.
Yeah, basically, we send £1 billion a month to the European Union net for them to choose to dispense where they wish. I just take the same view as everyone else, really. That's money that could be spent in the UK for our own purposes, on the health service, education service, on police. Far better to actually use the money in that way. I'm a very keen Brexiteer. I campaigned for us to leave in 2016, and we got the result. And for the last 3.5 years, we've been completely frustrated, I think, by people who opposed the concept of a referendum in the first place, and then opposed the democratic view of the British people. And the democratic view of the British people was that we should leave the European Union. Now, I think we need to leave with a deal. Theresa May tried very hard.
She did.
And you know, God bless her, she really did everything she could to get this deal together and then get it through Parliament. It wasn't a satisfactory deal. I mean, I think we've got to be fair about that, and therefore that's why it was rejected by Parliament 3 times. Boris has negotiated a deal which removes the backstop, and that's the biggest area of problems, because basically the backstop would kick in eventually if we couldn't negotiate the trade deal, and then the European Union would have to give us permission to leave. And it's just absolutely absurd. No way are we going to sign up to this. So Boris has removed that. He's set up the position whereby we leave with a deal, and the deal, I think, has been accepted across the broad range of MPs. I mean, the interesting thing was when we had the debate in Parliament, we got a bigger majority, a 30-vote majority, much bigger than we expected for the deal, because 19 Labour MPs voted with us to deliver the deal, which is good news. Unfortunately, those 17 of those Labour MPs then, I think 17 of a large group of them, chose then not to vote for the timetable motion for us to actually go through line by line and detail the legislation to get it on the statute books to then deliver, which is why we've got this general election now. If they'd have voted for the programme motion, we could have left the European Union by the 31st of October, and then we would be now talking about our future outside the European Union. So we're now in the position whereby if we are elected with a workable majority in Parliament on the 13th of December, because it will be the 13th when we count the votes, then we will deliver Brexit and we'll be out by the 31st of January, which is the next deadline that we've set. We'll start work the following week after the election on delivering the legislation required. And obviously it's got to go through the House of Commons, it's got to go through the House of Lords.
I mean, we did have...
And the European Parliament, yeah.
We did have certain Labour MPs that were questioned about it, and they did not have an alternative solution. Yes, they've stopped the deal. They've tried to make as much damage as possible.
Yes.
But at the moment, there are no solutions. So, you know, we have our fingers crossed. As we sort of summarize our kind of discussion over various topics, the one thing that comes to my mind that I wanted to ask you, and I didn't get the chance to, and I don't want to go away thinking, well, I didn't talk to him about it, was Leicester East. Now, as I understand, there's a lot of MPs leaving, you know, there's a lot of changes happening. We're at the 20-hour deadline when the nominations for all the parties are going to be thrown in and set in stone. So tell us what's happening, Andrew Griffiths, Leicester East. Is there any personal view that you have on those topics?
Yeah, I mean, basically what's happened is the election has happened very fast. A lot of people who were considering whether they should stand or not, if the election was when it should have been in 2022 under the Fixed Term Parliament Act, a lot of had to decide very quickly were they going to contest the election or not. So large numbers on both sides are stepping down, saying, I've done my time, I want to move off and do something else. You mentioned Andrew Griffiths. Andrew, I know very well. Obviously, there was a lot of controversy about his...
Yes, because people are setting judgment to something that they don't know.
Andrew was suffering from severe mental health problems. In fact, he was in a mental health hospital for 6 weeks. He had a terrible breakdown. He's now over that and is better and well. But unfortunately, his constituency association was badly split over whether he should contest the election or not. And his estranged wife is now the candidate there instead of him. So I think it's very sad for him. Good news for his wife, that she's going to hopefully come into Parliament.
Yeah.
And Charlie Elphick, who also was another colleague who was, unfortunately, is accused of all sorts of things, has stepped down, and his wife is now going to be the candidate in Dover. So hopefully she will be elected and representing that area. So, and then you've got Leicester East, and Leicester East, obviously, Keith Vaz had his well-documented problems. I'm not going to comment on those. That's for
it's been
for
there,
others.
yeah.
But the Labour Party have imposed a candidate, as I understand it, because, as you say, we're 20 hours away from closed nominations.
Correct.
So they've imposed a candidate on that association for the Labour Party. I think there's a lot of concern locally about both the candidate, who I understand chaired the Labour Party conference when the motion on Jammu and Kashmir was passed unanimously. So, she certainly is involved in that process.
Well, we do hope that the Conservative candidate for Leicester East wins. And in the same breath, I will say to everybody that has sort of spent this time listening to you, and, I've enjoyed talking to you, and I truly wish you, on behalf of myself and MATV, sincere good wishes, that you continue on this successful journey serving the community. Harrow East has been blessed to have you for almost a decade.
Yes.
And we truly hope that Bob comes back and with resounding success, because as an Indian and as a community station, we feel that, if hardworking people are served by people that make a difference, that's what we need. Service with a difference. And Bob, you've done fabulous with that. Any last thoughts as you leave us?
Well, as you say, my saver is to help and assist the
Saver.
community.
Oh, wonderful.
I am ingrained in the community because I grew up with people who arrived here as the so-called Ugandan Asians, if you like.
Correct.
I have formulated Neasden Temple. I laid the foundation stone at Neasden Temple.
Beautiful.
I just up the road from the studios in Ealing Road, I was involved in. I sold the land, and when I was leader of the council, we got planning permission for that wonderful mandir that's being created there. It's taken a rather long time to actually get there.
But it's beautiful.
But it's beautiful. I'm ingrained in that community, and if I get the chance to serve again, I will be giving 101% of my time and effort to help the whole entirety of the community of Harrow East to the best of my ability.
That's beautifully said. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you've been watching us on Rajneeti, I'm sure you enjoy the program. Do write to us with your feedback. We wish Bob all the very best. And thank you. This is Darshini Joshi signing off. Thank you for watching Rajneeti. Thank you.